Coming up on Network Africa, a court in Kenya finds 2 people linked to the 2013 attack on Westgate shopping mall guilty. Ethiopian lawmakers pass a resolution for the federal government to stop dealing with leaders of the northern Tigray region. Plus, South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa celebrates Archbishop Tutu on his 89th birthday. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Layo Adegoke. We begin today in Kenya, where a court has found 2 of 3 people linked to the 2013 attack on Westgate shopping mall in Kenya's capital, Nairobi, guilty. The Nairobi Chief Magistrate Francis Andai found the 2 men guilty of conspiracy to commit a terrorist act. He, however, freed one of the suspects for lack of evidence. The 3 had been charged with helping armed militants launch the attack back in 2013. The September 2013 Westgate attack left 62 civilians, 5 security officers, and the 4 attackers dead. Well, let's get more on this story from Kenyan journalist Cyrus Umbati. Thank you so much for speaking to us on the program. Cyrus, how are Kenyans reacting to this verdict at this time?
The Kenyans they were kind of, I don't know what to say, they're excited or they're happy, but you see, everyone was expecting a kind of judgment which will punish these people, in as much as we Kenyans knew that the real attackers who are involved in the killings and destruction of property at the mall were killed. But then Kenyans were expecting justice in one way or the other. They are among some few here guys, they are happy with the survivors of the mall attack. They are happy with the judgment. Others who are sympathizers of these people, they're saying the guys were not involved in one way or the other. So the reactions are varying from one individual to the other, depending on who you are talking to and their relationship with the suspects behind the attack. But generally, from the state itself, people are satisfied that finally people can get justice after 7 years of waiting. It's an issue now waiting and see, because the real sentencing is coming out on in 2 weeks' time, on 22nd of this month. We are waiting to hear what the judge will give them as their sentence in custody.
Now, with this verdict, what punishment are the men likely to face?
The sentencing of the 2 terror suspects who are behind the Westgate mall attack in 2013 was highly expected among many Kenyans, or not only Kenyans, but international community at large. They are likely to face various kind of imprisonment, because they have 12 charges they are facing, ranging from being in Kenya illegally, assisting the terror attack, uttering false documents. So these sentences can range from between 20 to life sentence. It varies on each individual. It will be a long sentence, I believe, which will come to them. They are ready for it. Yes, they can appeal. If they fail, the defense may want to appeal, they can appeal, but then it will depend on what they are basing the argument on. But the current situation in Kenya, it's not possible for them to get that leeway easily. But they may want to fight back and try to see whether they can get off the hook on one or the other.
Well, Cyrus, we understand that a 3rd person was set free for lack of evidence. Is this final, or will his case be taken to a higher court, perhaps?
The release of another suspect, there were 4 suspects in this case initially, and the 2 are so far have been released because of lack of evidence. The magistrate said that the suspect in question, who was released today, had convinced him that he was not aware of what was going on. He was a refugee, and his brother was also a refugee. His brother was killed in the terror attack, at the Westgate attack. what he was arguing, what he told the court was that his brother used his phone when they were together at the refugee camp in Garissa. That's the biggest refugee camp in the country. It's based in Garissa, near the Kenyan border and Somalia. He argued that his brother, when he had vanished from the camp, the refugee camp, and then when he came back, he stayed there for a short while and used his phone to call some terror suspects in Somalia. So out of that call which he made to Somalia is the one which police linked him to the attack. He convinced the magistrate that he was not involved in the attack, or he didn't facilitate it in one way or the other. But then we don't know what the prosecution plans to do. But so far he was released. He was released today, and I believe he's going home, or rather, he's going back to his refugee camp where he has been. He was picked from then.
Just before I let you go, it's 7 years after this Westgate mall attack. Can we say the security situation in the country has improved since then?
So far, we can't say that Kenya is safe, even 7 years after the attack, because every day, Kenya is sharing up a large porous border with Somalia. And you see, the problem is securing that border is a problem, because the people who are there, they are Somalis, the attackers are Somalis, they are sympathizers. So it becomes difficult to man. Like yesterday, you remember near the border in a county called Mandera, these Al-Shabaab terrorists attacked a bus and shot it. They made sporadic shooting and injured 7 passengers. They went and tried to check if there were non-Muslims there so that they could slaughter them or kidnap them, but luckily there's no Muslim, so they left. In the past 3 months, we've been having a series of attacks. The terrorists come to Kenya, they set up explosives on the road, targeting security agencies. We've lost many people since the Westgate attack. Many, you remember, there was a Garissa University attack, which came in 2015, 2 years later, whereby we lost almost 150 students. Then there was a Dusit attack where 2 people were killed. Dusit was a complex hotel here within the CBD. In as much as there have been no attacks within the countryside as such, there have been repeated attacks near the border area.
All right then, thank you so much, Cyrus Mbati, Kenyan journalist joining us there from Nairobi. Moving up to Ethiopia, lawmakers have passed a resolution for the federal government to stop dealing with leaders of the northern Tigray region. Now, this comes after the region held its own election for the Tigray parliament in September, despite the federal government and electoral board announcing the postponement of all elections. Officials of the ruling party in the region, the Tigray People's Liberation Front, TPLF, subsequently said they do not recognize the federal government. Let's now speak to Brooke Abdu, an Ethiopian journalist, for more on this story. Hello, Brooke, and thank you so much for speaking to us on Network Africa. What exactly does this vote by Parliament mean? Help us understand. Isn't this a call for anarchy?
Thank you very much for inviting me to the show, and it's always a pleasure to be on this show. Yesterday's and today's decision by the House of the Federation to cut ties with the Tigrayan People's Tigrayan region's new government is a continuation of the tit for tat that went on for the past 2 years between the federal government in Addis Ababa and the Tigrayan regional government in Mekelle. So, in deference to the decision by the House of the Federation, that is the upper house in the Ethiopian bicameral parliament, the Tigrayan regional government held a regional election and it established a new government very recently. So the federal government has repeatedly been saying this election is illegal, and the House of the Federation ruled that this election is null and void. So this decision is a continuation of that decision, and now the new decision that came out of the House of the Federation is to cut ties and federal subsidy to the Tigray region, that is the newly established government after the regional election that the Tigrayan People's Liberation Front won. So although the outcome of this election is not, this decision is not clear, there is assumption among many that this is going to make the already tense political landscape in the country more tense.
Indeed. Now, how is the Ethiopian government reacting to this parliament's vote?
Well, this decision by the House of the Federation, that's not the parliament actually. The parliament is the lower chamber of the bicameral parliamentary system in the country. But this decision by the House of the Federation cannot be seen as a different decision from the federal government in Ethiopia. So it's in the interest of the federal government that there is some kind of measure to be taken on the decision by the Tigrayan regional government to hold elections that the federal government doesn't want to be held. So the federal government didn't want to hold the election because of the coronavirus pandemic that was discovered in the country 5 months ago. So because of the happening of the coronavirus pandemic in the country, the government decided to extend the national elections. But the Tigrayan regional government said that this is unconstitutional and we're going to proceed with our own regional election. And they established a new electoral board, that's electoral commission that could proceed with election in the regional government. So finally the result came out that the incumbent, that's the Tigrayan People's Liberation Front, won the election and established a new government. So from the outset, the federal government has been saying that this election is not legal and it's against the decision made by the parliament and the House of the Federation, that is both the upper and lower chambers of the bicameral parliamentary system in the country. So this new decision that came out of the House of the Federation, that is cutting ties with the regional government, the new regional government in Tigray, and cutting federal subsidies to the regional government, is in the interest of the federal government that wants us to have control in the Tigray region.
All right, Brooke, just before I let you go, the lawmakers have passed a resolution. What are the Tigray authorities saying about this?
Well, officials in the newly established Tigray government have been saying that the federal government that didn't hold elections and established a new government according to the constitutional provision that states that every 5 years there should be an election in this country and a new government should be established before a month before the end of the term of the existing parliament and executive. So the Tigrayan regional officials have been repeatedly saying that the federal government will not be legal and it will be unconstitutional if it proceeds to hold office without holding election in this country. So the current decision comes after this kind of statements that repeatedly came out of region in Tigray, Tigrayan regional government. So currently the Tigrayan officials consider the today's and yesterday's decision by the House of the Federation as an act of declaring war on them. So they say that this will be a declaration of war on the region and they will respond to it accordingly.
All right then, Brooke Abdu, Ethiopian journalist, thank you for speaking to us on the program. Well, Malawi's President Lazarus Chakwera is in Tanzania for a 2-day state visit. He's expected to meet President John Magufuli, who is taking a break from campaigning ahead of elections next month. Mr. Chakwera is the third head of state to visit Tanzania in less than a month, and analysts believe President Magufuli is seeking to show he has strong diplomatic relations with his neighbors. You're watching Network Africa on Channels Television. Still ahead on the program. A Somalian women's basketball team is thriving in Mogadishu. We'll give you details later in the program. Welcome back to the program. South Africa's police has denied reports that it had issued an arrest warrant for the ruling party's Secretary General over corruption allegations. In a statement, spokesperson Hagwani Mulaudzi says the reports are a malicious intent to undermine the integrity of the police. Earlier, the African National Congress official Ace Magashule told local media that his arrest was imminent. Mr. Magashule was the premier of the Free State province when funds meant for farmers were allegedly diverted. He has in the past denied any wrongdoing. Still in South Africa, a group of umbrella labor unions have today embarked on a nationwide strike. Led by the Congress of South African Trade Unions, COSATU, the union stayed away from work but took to the streets across the country in protest, armed with a list of demands. Among other things, they say the protests are over corruption, the failing economy, and government's non-implementation of agreed wage hikes for public servants. While the protest action was called for by COSATU, it is also endorsed by the Federation of Unions of South Africa, FEDUSA, and the National Council of Trade Unions, NACTU, which are all represented at the National Economic Development and Labour Council.
This is Johannesburg's Central Business District brought to a halt as a coalition of labour unions embarked on the all-out strike they had promised. The picture was the same in various cities across the country. The timing seemed wrong to many as the economy struggles under several challenges, including the COVID-19 pandemic, but the protesters insist the issues they're raising still need urgent attention.
As we speak today, the working class and the poor do not have food. Government has come out with a stimulus and relief package of 500 billion. And out of that money, some money has been stolen. PPEs, corruption, undermining of collective bargaining. We are fighting against gender-based violence. Are you saying we must wait because of the economic crisis and wait for it to stabilize and begin to raise issues of corruption and begin to raise issues of hunger? I don't think so.
The gathering began at COSATU House in Braamfontein and moved to the Chamber of Commerce and Industry, to the office of the Gauteng Premier David Makura, and then to the Minerals Council office in the Johannesburg Central Business District.
I've been working for the Department of Infrastructure under the EPWP for 7 years, and I've been earning 2,000 a month, which of course I can't do anything about it.
We are fighting actually because we want to be permanent under municipality, because it's been over 15 years, it's been contract after contract, and we are earning peanuts.
Some government departments were affected, as can be seen here outside the Labour Department in Johannesburg, which shows a long queue of people outside the offices waiting to be served. The Democratic Nursing Organization of South Africa, DENOSA, and the Federation of Unions of South Africa were also part of the protest.
As healthcare providers, we were there as a frontliners, and we haven't received any risk allowance for COVID-19. We do receive danger allowance for other things, but for COVID-19, nothing yet.
We're a developing nation that is in the middle of a pandemic. So the scarce resources that we should have should not be finding their ways into the private bank accounts of politically connected individuals.
In response to the stay away, the government has instructed all departments to enforce the principle of no work, no pay. But the striking workers say they will sheath their swords after today temporarily to see government's response to their demands. That, they say, will determine what they would do next.
Acting UN Special Representative for Libya, Stephanie Williams, says the de facto ceasefire on the ground is helping the political process in the country. However, she adds that the UN is worried about the continuing influx of weapons and mercenaries into the country.
One of the other things that I've heard loud and clear from Libyans is that the participants in the political talks should all sign a pledge that they will not put themselves forward. They will not put their own names forward for consideration for senior positions in any new executive that might emerge through the political process, or indeed for the sovereign positions, the 7 key sovereign positions in Libya. So the good thing is we have a lull in hostilities. We basically have a de facto ceasefire on the ground, which is good because that helps the political process. That keeps things calm so that we can get back to the dialogue table. But we are also very trepidatious about this continuing influx of weapons and mercenaries and equipment into the country on both sides. And this really has to stop. One thing that is true, and that is, I think, quite devastating for the Libyans, is almost their complete loss of sovereignty. And we intend to help them restore that sovereignty through a Libyan-led and Libyan-owned political process that, by the way, should end with the explicit objective of national elections.
A Somalian women's basketball team is thriving in Mogadishu despite threats from Islamist militants and disapproval from the society. Now, despite these obstacles, former basketball player Nasra Mohammed has built a team of girls in the capital she thinks can compete internationally.
Basketball practice for this all-female team in Somalia is not just hard because of the blistering heat. The women are also braving the scorn of their families and even the threat of attack by gunmen who think women should not play sports publicly. Fadaswa Omar Ali is one of the players.
Mogadishu is risky. We cannot openly say we are going to play. We put our playing clothes and shoes into school bags and carry them like that to the field and pretend we're going to school or the university. Despite the insecurity and with no government that encourages or supports us, we still love playing basketball.
The women only play in compounds behind high concrete walls, which shields them from the gaze of the curious or those who might attack them. One of the coaches of the 30-strong team is 51-year-old Nasra Mohammed. She says the women receive no funding.
No one supports us or gives us equipment, and we don't have anyone supporting the players with uniforms, balls and shoes. We don't even have a proper court.
When they play matches, the trainers pull money to buy a cheap cup as a prize. But they love what they do and dream of starting teams all over the country.
Well, finally on the program, South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa is celebrating Archbishop Desmond Tutu on his 89th birthday. The president says the Archbishop is a national treasure and global icon of moral consistency, spiritual virtue, and the defense of the most vulnerable people. President Ramaphosa tweeted about benefiting from the Archbishop's wisdom. Now, Archbishop Tutu remains a much-loved figure across the world, principally for his role in South Africa's struggle against apartheid. During the long years that Nelson Mandela was in prison, Archbishop Tutu spoke out against the regime and won the Nobel Peace Prize in 1984 for his efforts. Well, a happy birthday to him. And that's Network Africa for today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Layo Adegoke.